بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله ثم الصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين محمد وعلى آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين. We praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the guidance that we receive, knowing that without that guidance we would have been gone astray. Blessing and peace be upon the most noble of all the Prophet Muhammad and his pure progenies. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. A'udhu billahi minash shaitan al-la'in ar-rajim. Hatta idha ja'a ahadahumul maut قال رب ارجعون لعلي أعمل صالحا فيما تركت كلا إنها كلمة هو قائلها ومن ورائهم برزخ إلى يوم يبعثون. And until death comes to one of them, he will say, "My Lord, send me back, so that I may act righteously in the world that I have left behind." Never it is a word that they utter, and in front of them there is barzakh until the day of judgment. Sisters and brothers, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. In Islamic terminology, the concept of ma'ad and the life in the after this world is one of those critical concepts that incorporates a number of topics and issues such as resurrection, accountability, heaven and hell. And one of these topics is the concept of barzakh. The concept of barzakh in Islam is very close, but not exactly the same as the purgatory in the Roman Catholic understanding. While Roman Catholics claim that the period of waiting or purgatory is there for those who ultimately are supposed to go to heaven to be purified and honored, in Islam, concept of barzakh and waiting is slightly different. We don't believe, or at least Islam doesn't say that barzakh, or this period of waiting, is something that you will be purified. Barzakh, from an Islamic point of view, is a period that begins with death, and nobody knows how long it's going to last until the trumpet day, which is the final day and the day of resurrection. Since on the day of resurrection, everyone is supposed to be resurrected to stand up for what they have done. Between now and then, this period in which the soul will be in some unique position or suspense is called barzakh. If we look at the literature in the Islamic understanding of barzakh, or Islamic understanding of life, human life begins with a conception. Then you have 40 weeks of gestation or development. Then comes birth. After birth, you have a long period, God knows how many years, your life. Then comes death and departure. Then we have to go through this waiting period until the day of resurrection, when everybody is resurrected. So literally, the life of any human being can be divided into two phases. First, the living phase in this world. The second, the living phase in a totally different world, which we are not aware of it. We cannot see it, but some people might be able to if they work hard. So Islamic understanding of barzakh is that it begins with death. The verse that I recited, Surah Al-Mu'minun, verse number 99 and 100. حَتَّى إِذَا جَاءَ أَحَدَهُمُ الْمَوْتِ. When death comes. قَالَ رَبِّ ارْجِعُونَ. Oh Lord, let's go back. Return us. And the answer comes, it's wishful thinking. That's what you say. There is barzakh in front of you until the day of resurrection. In the translation and the exegesis of the verses and Urafa and the mystic interpretation of it, they say that every human being passes through a unique phase or a unique instance around the end of his or her life, which are called lahzatul yaqza, the moment of realization, in which, according to some verses that we have, the veils in front of our eyes are removed and we see the future and we reflect upon the past. We contemplate suddenly that, look, this is my future and I have wasted 80 years behind me. At this particular moment, repentance is not accepted because now the veils are removed and you can see it. And the verse in Surah Al-Mu'min refers to this unique moment, that normally for those whom their future is not looking rosy, they want to go back to the old life that they may be able to compensate. There are a number of other verses in the Holy Quran that speaks about the barzakh. We have Surah Ghafir 46, Al Imran 169, Baqarah 154. They all refer to this stage between death and resurrection. The question is, the literature that we have speaks about what happened during this period. It's one of those critical periods that hadith and some verses shed light. What happened during this period? A soul is left in suspense. It's not completely detached from the world that used to live before, and yet at the same time completely not attached to it. Some kind of weak relationship with the material world, although the soul does not live in the material world. This is why we have a number of ahadith for those who pass away and depart. During barzakh, their souls are closely associated with the family and with the friends and the environment that they used to be familiar with. It's not complete detachment, but it's not, at the same time, it's not complete attachment. They benefit from the reward of those who are left behind, families. During month of Ramadan, if you give sadaqah, if you recite Quran, if you do prayers for the deceased, they definitely benefit from them. They are also pained by the action of those who are left behind. If the father disappears or departs, or the mother disappears or departs, or grandparents depart, and the sons and the daughters behave in a negative way, they are going to be pained. Particularly if they were the cause of it. If the parents did not discharge their responsibilities properly in bringing up the children, the failure of the children is not a willful act by the children, but because of the upbringing, they will be punished. That's why we have so many hadith encouraging us to be mindful. That if you fail to deliver your responsibility towards bringing up your children properly, and a future generation, by your death, your relationship with them is not finished. You still will be questioned if they do something wrong, because you were the cause, parents were the cause, they will be asked and they will be pained by this moving in a direction that the parents don't want it. So during this barzakh period, the soul is left in suspense. Some weak relationship with the life behind, and waiting for the trumpet to be blown and the day of resurrection to start. There are 3 types of people, if we look at the literature that we have, and each one, according to the Quran and the Hadith, behaves in a different, or barzakh becomes a unique environment for them. Those who are absolutely good, pure souls, even the period of barzakh becomes a first step to heaven. Verses in the Holy Quran clearly indicate that during their life, لا يسمعون فيها لغوا ولا تأثيما ولهم رزقهم فيها بكرة وعشيا. They don't hear any absurdity therein, and during their stay, night and day, blessing will come to them. So the waiting period during barzakh becomes the first step towards heaven for these people who are pure souls. On the opposite end of the polarity becomes those who are pure evil. Again, the verse in the Holy Quran, النار يعرضون عليها غدوا وعشيا. Now, this time is the reverse. Now the fire, they present to the fire every morning and every evening. And then يوم تقوم الساعة, that's later on. So period of barzakh becomes a period in which your confined environment, as the hadith from Imam Sajjad salawatullah salam alayhi says, hadith is quite clear. Al-barzakh, inna al-qabr إما روضة من رياض الجنة أو حفرة من حفر النار. Your grave during this period of waiting, during your barzakh, could become either a heavenly garden or a pit of fire. These are for the 2 groups. But what about the 3rd group that's somewhere in between? Neither pure and neither evil. Where do they locate? This is most of us. We fall, inshallah, within this category. We are neither pure and hopefully neither evil, so that our matters are resolved immediately. This group, they have to wait until the day of judgment where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decides their fate. But with an advantage, that during this period, as they are waiting, all salihat, all good deeds that are sinned, either by themselves in preparation for it, or by their family, its kind of balance are topped up slowly, and you move from one angle to another. If your children recite Quran or give sadaqah, the thawab comes. They offer prayer, the thawab comes. But for the soul of the deceased, if they feed a poor family and needy, they assist somebody in need. But for the soul of the deceased, they benefit from it. Ultimately, on the day of judgment, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make a decision as to one way or the other. But the 3rd group, their souls are somewhere in limbo, in waiting, that ultimately it will be decided for them on the day of judgment. There are a number of hadith narrated from Ahlul Bayt regarding barzakh. Imam Sadiq salawatullah salam alayhi is asked, where is barzakh? He says, what are the views of others about this issue? They say, the person that was asking the question says that these people are saying it's on the day of judgment. He says, no. barzakh ذلك في الدنيا قبل يوم القيامة لأن في نار القيامة لا يكون غدوا ولا عشيا. Says, focus on the verse of the Holy Quran. When the Holy Quran says during Barzakh, the evil ones are taken to fire and exposed to fire morning and evening. There is no morning and evening on the day of judgment. So it is on this earth. The period is on this earth. Imam Sadiq salawatullah salam alayhi, another hadith, al-barzakh al-qabr, the grave, the period in which you stay in the qabr is your barzakh. وهو الثواب والعقاب بين الدنيا والآخرة. It's a period in which you benefit from your good deeds and your evil deeds between this life, the first phase, and ultimately the day of judgment. والله ما نخاف عليكم إلا البرزخ. And this period is a period that we, Ahlul Bayt, are afraid for you. Sallallahu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. We are afraid of your condition during this barzakh. Why? Because our shafa'ah will not cover barzakh period. You are on your own. You are left to your deeds. This is why when we look at the literature, it's so critical to focus on our amal and deeds. There is a hadith that says, Amir al-Mu'mineen sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says, you have 3 types of friends. Your wealth is your number 1 during your life. This is what we pay attention to. The bigger house, many cars, traveling, number of zeros in front of a number in a bank account. This is what we pay attention to. In a materialistically structured life, الناس عبيد الدنيا, Imam Hussein salawatullah salam alayhi. But this friend can stay with you until you breathe the last breath. Once you have finished, the breath is gone, the mal, wealth is no longer yours, is part of the inheritance for other people. So a limited friend that comes with you until your last breath. The second type are your family, children, wife, etc., etc. They are with you until they put you in the grave. They dig a hole and that's it. Once they turn their back and they go back to their normal life, they don't want to hear. You'll be lucky if once a week or once a month the so-called family members that you struggled all your life to make them comfortable and provide for them, to pay attention and remember. I go to the cemeteries and I feel ashamed when I look at these graves of people who worked so hard for this Islamic center and for this community. Dust on the grave, which indicates nobody visits these graves. So that's number 2. And finally, number 3 is your a'mal, your deeds. That you didn't pay attention to them, but stays with you until the day of judgment. Whether friend or whether enemy. During barzakh, your close friends are your deeds. How you structure your life during this short period, transient period, what you do, how you prepare yourself for the hereafter is absolutely critical. You would leave your mal, your family behind. Amir al-Mu'mineen salawatullah salam alayhi, I say this and I finish, I'm getting to the end of the 20 minutes. On the return from Safin, looked at people who had killed or died, and he talks to them. Says, as far as your wealth is left for somebody else. As far as your family, they've gone engaged in their own businesses and affairs. Unfortunately, you are left with your deeds. During these critical nights, 3 or 4 nights left of this month, pay attention. All of us, we really need to step back and reflect. Nobody knows sisters and brothers, whether Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will privilege us by another month of Ramadan next year. Let's take this gift, the four more nights or 5 more nights left, and do as much as we can to benefit from it. May Allah protect all of us and guide us to the right path, inshallah. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Wa sallallahu ala Muhammadin wa alihi at-tahirin. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.